Stoic Enlightenment era would like to send a warm welcome to you, who is stopping in the endless flow of the digital world. The fact that you are seeing this video today is not just a coincidence. Maybe it is a gentle reminder from the universe. You are ready. Ready to receive a message not for the majority, but for those who are destined enough, have enough depth and desire to explore themselves. Every day, thousands of videos pass by your eyes, but not all of them make you stop. If you are listening to these words, I believe your frequency has reached the right moment, and from this moment on, you are no longer a casual observer. You are part of the journey. Today's video was not written to attract attention or gain views. It was created from years of walking through darkness, confronting pain, and awakening from within. What I share does not come from books, nor from flowery words on social media. It comes from real experiences, real conclusions, and a real awakening process. I understand what I am about to say is not popular, because it is not for the masses. It is not meant to entertain, it is meant to awaken. And only when you are truly ready, when you are calm enough to listen, can you receive the full value that lies beneath each word. So I invite you to come with me to the end of this video. Don't miss a single moment, because sometimes just one sentence, one small idea, can change the entire direction of your life. I'm not saying that after this video, your life will change instantly. But I can assure you of one thing: if you take it in with all your heart, if you practice it with sincerity, then in a few months, you will find yourself no longer the same. The way you think, the way you look at life, and the energy you carry will change dramatically. And if what I say resonates with you, let me know by clicking like, so I know you're here. And don't forget to subscribe to continue our journey of enlightening the mind and developing inner strength. Welcome to a space dedicated to transformation, where you don't have to be anyone other than yourself. Take a deep breath, let go of everything, and together embark on a journey that perhaps you have been waiting for a long time. Do you ever feel like a puppet, being pulled around by your own emotions? Just one careless word, you get angry. Just one unfriendly look, you feel hurt. Just one unclear text message, you worry all day. If everything that happens outside makes your insides shake. So the question is, are you living your life, or are you reacting to someone else's? Most of us grow up with a concept of freedom that sounds very reasonable. Freedom is being able to do what you want. Sounds about right, right? Say what you want. If you want to leave, then leave. You have the right to choose what job, relationship, or lifestyle you want. But here's the thing: even if you have all the choices in life, if you don't have control over your emotions, you're not truly free. I have felt that way many times. One day, when everything was normal, someone just texted me, "We need to talk," and my heart dropped to the bottom. I started overthinking, creating scenarios in my head, reacting to the storm of emotions that came my way. And then, I realized, I was not living by reason, but was being led by emotions without even knowing it. Maybe you have been there too. This is what Stoicism warned me about, coldly but accurately. Philosopher Seneca once said, "No one can hurt you unless you let them." Do you understand? The world is always moving. People are always changing. Words, actions, expressions, None of these are things you can control. But what you can always control is how you select response. And it is that choice that is the root of true freedom. It's not that you're insensitive. It's not that you're indifferent. It's about being alert enough to see the emotion rising and choosing not to be pulled away by it. Imagine if you could stand in the middle of an argument and still keep your cool. If you can read a harsh criticism without immediately reacting. If you can keep a distance between your emotions and your actions. That's when you're tapping into a form of inner freedom that no one can take away. Freedom does not mean you are unaffected. Freedom is when you are no longer dragged. And that journey begins the moment you choose to stop before reacting. Have you ever wondered why we sometimes react before we think? Someone says something disrespectful, and you instantly snap. A passing remark, and you feel your heart racing. Your face tense, your whole body ready to strike back. It all happens almost automatically. There's no pause. There's no choice. Just a feeling, and then an action. And most of the time, that action is the one we regret in the end. That is the nature of emotional reflexes. We grow up being taught how to think, calculate, choose, but very few of us are taught how to observe our emotions. When in fact, emotions are where all decisions begin. When you are offended, you may say, "I can't control myself," but the truth is that you are being controlled without even realizing it. Emotions are bioenergy. They come from your body, from hormones, from nerve signals, from millions of years of genetics. That's why they're so powerful. They don't need your permission to come. That's why they're not a problem. The problem is that we react to them unconsciously. Imagine you're driving, and suddenly someone cuts you off. You honk, curse, speed up, follow. All of these actions happen not because you want them to, but because you're being pulled along by an uncontrolled chain of emotions. In psychology, it's called emotional hijacking, when your emotional system takes over your rational system. And when that happens, you're no longer yourself. You're your instinctive self, vulnerable, destructive, and easily manipulated. The Stoics saw this more than 2,000 years ago. They weren't trying to teach us to run away from our emotions, or to suppress them like a cold stone. They were simply pointing out that if you react immediately, you're letting your emotions take over. And when emotions control you, you are no longer the master. The important question is, do you want to live like that? A wise person is not emotionless. They still feel angry. They still feel sad. They still feel hurt. But they recognize it. They name it. And they choose to respond rather than react. It's the difference between living on purpose and living as a survival reflex. If you really want to become a free, deep and powerful person, you must start by taking back control from your emotional reflexes. You don't have to change your whole life all at once. Just start with the next moment, when you feel anger rising. Instead of saying something hurtful, take a deep breath, look at the feeling and say, "I see you, but I decide what happens next." Just by doing that, you have come a long way on your journey to mastering yourself. There is an invisible trap that most of us fall into, not just once, but over and over again. It makes no noise. It has no strings attached, but it silently controls how we react, how we behave, and sometimes how we lose ourselves. It is called the unconscious loop. The cycle starts with small, everyday situations. Someone criticizes you in front of others, you feel hurt. And almost immediately, you snap back with anger. Someone ignores you in conversation, you feel disrespected. And you become cold and withdrawn. These things happen so quickly that we don't even realize it. We are being controlled by our emotions without any choice. It's like a pre-programmed program. Stimulus, emotion, response. When someone pushes the right emotional button, we immediately go into defense, attack, or withdrawal mode. The important thing is, the more we repeat this chain of reactions, the more we ingrain a behavioral pattern. And gradually, it stops being a reaction. It becomes a personality trait. I've been there. There was a time when I would get angry at the slightest thing I said. Someone would forget to reply to a text message, and I'd tell myself they were taking me for granted. So I shut down. I built walls. I was cold, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know any other way to deal with it. But the most dangerous thing about this unconscious loop isn't just that we react incorrectly. It's that it causes us to say things we shouldn't say, do things we shouldn't do, and ultimately, regret. Have you ever been in that situation? When an argument flares up, you scream, then later say to yourself, if only I had been calmer. Or when you end a good relationship out of hurt, only to realize a few weeks later that it was an unconscious defense, not a conscious decision. In fact, no one teaches us how to break that cycle. Schools teach knowledge, but not how to process emotions. Society teaches us to be strong, but not how to recognize the hurt that is silently manipulating us inside. So, the first step to escaping this trap is to see it. When you start to realize, this is the old chain reaction coming back up, you create a pause, and it is in that pause that you take back control. You no longer have to force yourself to be cool. You no longer need to react to assert your worth. You begin to have choices, and that choice is the first sign of inner freedom. The unconscious loop is not destiny. It is habit, and every habit can be changed, if you are conscious enough to recognize it and courageous enough to change it. There is a tiny moment that most of us miss. It only lasts a few seconds, even a few fractions of a second, but if you catch it, it can change your entire life. It is the moment between emotion and action. Usually, when we are touched by something painful, a criticism, a contemptuous look, an unpleasant situation, emotions arise almost immediately, and if we don't realize it, we react instinctively. Anger, irritation, ignorance, retaliation, it all happens almost automatically. But between, I feel angry, and I yell at someone, there is a space. A space where you can choose to respond instead of react. And it is at that point that true inner freedom begins. I didn't see that gap. My reactions were so quick, like a reflex. Only after the incident was over did I regret, if only I hadn't been so hasty. But then I learned something incredibly simple, yet incredibly powerful, the chain-breaking technique. Whenever you feel emotions rising, stop. Just take 3 deep breaths. It may sound silly at first, but the breath is a tool that helps you step out of the automatic reaction. It brings you back to the present, back to your center. Then ask yourself, what I'm feeling, is it real, or just an inference? This question helps you escape the emotional trap. Because a lot of the time, we don't react to reality. We react to the story we tell ourselves in our heads. A simple example: someone doesn't say hello as they walk by. You feel slighted, but is it true? Or are you just interpreting it because you've been hurt by something similar in the past? Finally, pause for at least 10 seconds. Just wait. Don't say anything. Don't do anything. Those 10 seconds, though brief, are the moments when you give yourself back control. And then, you have a choice. No more blind reaction. No more being driven by momentary emotion. You will choose to respond in a way that aligns with the person you want to become, not the old instincts you want to leave behind. The best part is, you don't have to be perfect right away. You just have to notice the gap once, then notice it sooner, and then one day, you will see. You no longer react the same way. That is freedom, not without emotion. But you have become the person who chooses to live between emotions and actions. You can't change what you don't recognize. And you can't control what you think is you. Most of us go through life without really observing ourselves. Emotions come and we get carried away. Moods change and we label them. I'm having a bad day, or I'm stressed. And then we let them define our day, our week, even our identity. But that's not true. You are not your emotions. You are the one with the power to see that feeling. And from the moment you start observing yourself, you open a new door, the door of inner freedom. I remember very clearly the first time I started writing down my feelings every day. Not in a literary way, just a few lines. I felt sad today when my colleague rejected my idea. I feel angry when my relatives don't listen to me. I feel anxious when I receive emails from my boss without knowing the reason. Writing doesn't make the emotion go away, but it does something magical. It slows down the whole chain reaction. Instead of reacting automatically, I start to realize, oh, this is a recurring emotional pattern. And when you see a recurring pattern, you can change it. A simple but extremely important step is to name the emotion correctly. Most of the time, we use strong words like, I'm angry, I'm offended, I'm devastated, as if those emotions were who we are. But try changing the way you say them. Instead of, I am angry, say, I am realizing that anger is rising in me. Feels different, doesn't it? That little sentence creates a very important distance, the distance between you and your emotions. And in that distance, you return to the position of the observer. You are no longer the anger. You are the one who is seeing it arise. And the one who sees always has a choice. This is not theory. This is a real skill. And like any skill, it takes practice. But trust me, every time you do this, you are not just controlling your emotions. You are rebuilding a more stable, calm self that is not easily swayed by temporary things. Someone asked me, how to stay calm in the face of things you cannot control. I don't have a magic answer, but I do know one thing. The person who can observe his own emotions is the person who begins to master himself. And that is the first lever leading to true freedom. Have you ever heard someone say, quick response is intelligence, immediate response is bravery? Actually, that's not entirely true. In many cases, being too quick to react isn't a sign of intelligence, it's a sign of an untrained mind. I used to be that kind of person. If someone said something that upset me, I would react quickly, directly, harshly, and I thought I was showing strength, not letting anyone walk all over me. But then I started to realize what I said in anger almost never had a good outcome. It made people defensive, escalated tensions, and worst of all, I often had to apologize for what I said. From there, I learned a simple skill, but one that takes a lot of courage to practice: pausing. Pausing is not avoidance. It is not a sign of weakness. On the contrary, pausing is an act of inner strength. Because, instead of being carried away by momentary emotions, you choose to stop to observe, to understand, and then respond. That is true strength. I remember one time in a meeting, a colleague publicly criticized my idea in front of the group. My first instinct was to immediately respond, but I chose to stay silent, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I needed more time to see things more clearly. When the meeting ended, I met with the person privately to ask for their thoughts, and in the end, we refined part of the plan, even better than the original. If I had reacted immediately that day, the conversation would have turned into an argument, and the opportunity to learn would have been lost. This is also true in personal relationships. Sometimes people are just voicing their pain, but we listen with the ears of hurt. We react to defend ourselves, instead of staying silent to understand. Purposeful silence is not the same as silence out of weakness. A person who knows when to be silent, and why, is a person who is deeply in control of his own inner self. You don't always have to have the answer right away. You don't have to prove yourself right in every situation. You just have to be strong enough to stop, deep enough to observe, and mature enough to know that not everything is worth reacting to, but everything is worth understanding. It's not just a communication skill. It's a way of life, the way of truly strong people. There is a quiet, yet powerful, shift that takes place in the minds of people who have been swept away by emotions, when they stop reacting instinctively and begin acting with intention. When you react on instinct, your emotions dictate your behavior. But when you start acting with intention, your intelligence takes the wheel. And that is the transformation of inner power. I used to live in reflex mode like everyone else. If someone criticized me, I would defend myself. If someone insulted me, I would counterattack. If someone ignored me, I would be cold. All my actions were a reflection of my momentary emotions. And then I ask myself, what values am I living by? Or am I just living in reaction to the world? Freedom does not begin when you do whatever you want. It begins when you choose what to do, what words to say, and what attitude to maintain, no matter what the circumstances. When you enter a tense conversation, what guides you? If it's emotional, you'll say it to prove you're right. But if it is wisdom, you will speak to find out what is right. Stoic practitioners understand that emotions are not always wrong, but they cannot be the only compass to guide us, because emotions change with the hour, with the situation, with the memory, but wisdom is stable. In any conversation, they ask themselves, does this serve the truth? Does this maintain respect for both parties? Does this clarify the issue? Or just confuse the situation? Those three questions, they sound simple, but they create a whole new way of living. They help you speak without having to raise your voice, stand your ground without having to be tough, Defend yourself without having to put others down. You don't need to be a sage to do this. You just need to start asking questions before you say or do anything. Because in every situation, you always have two options: or react emotionally, or act intelligently. And every time you choose wisdom, you are building a stronger person inside. Acting with purpose doesn't make you rigid. On the contrary, it makes you sharp, calm, and trustworthy. It transforms you from someone who is driven by your emotions to someone who leads your own life. That is the quality of people with true inner strength, people who are not shaken by circumstances. Because they have chosen to live proactively, clearly, and with self-respect. We grow up hearing, "Don't let your emotions rule you." But very few people tell us, so what to do with emotions? Repress it? Ignore it? Pretend it doesn't exist? Or try to be strong and cold? The truth is, emotions are not the enemy. They are not weak, evil, or something that needs to be eliminated. Emotions are, after all, tools. And like any tool, they are only dangerous when you let them control you, rather than when you use them properly. Think of emotions as internal road signs. When you feel angry, something may be unfair. When you feel sad, something deep inside you may be hurting. When you feel anxious, you may be facing an uncertain future and need to prepare better. Emotions are messages, not commands. It appears to say to you, "Pay attention to this," not "Follow me immediately." You have the right to listen, but also have the right to choose how to respond. A person with inner strength is not a person without emotions. A person with inner strength is someone who can stand still in the midst of the emotional wave. Listen to it, understand it, and then decide to act on what is right, not what the emotion compels. I used to be afraid of my own emotions. When I felt anxious, I tried to distract myself. When I felt angry, I suppressed it. When I felt sad, I tried to act like I was okay. But that didn't make me stronger. It just made me more distant from myself, and more likely to explode when my emotions got too much. Everything changed when I learned to name the emotion. Sit with it, and ask, "What are you here to say?" And the strange thing is, when I talk to my emotions, they no longer control me. I started using my anxiety to prepare better. Use sadness to write down what you have never been able to tell anyone. Use anger to identify what is important to you and needs to be protected. From then on, emotions were no longer handcuffs that bound me. They became a silent servant, guiding me to understand myself more deeply and live more correctly. So, if you ever find emotions burdensome, confusing, change your perspective. Do not resist. Do not submit. Take control. Listen. And act like a driver, not a passenger caught in the current. That is when you begin to re-establish a very special kind of freedom within yourself. Freedom is one of the most talked about words, but also one of the most misunderstood concepts. People often think of freedom as not being controlled by anyone, not being bound by rules, not having to do things you don't want to do. But if you live in a world where everyone respects you, no one forces you, no one insults you, where just a word is enough to make you angry, are you truly free? True freedom does not consist in not being affected, but in not being affected by it. It is an internal state, a place where you can still hear noise, but not be disoriented by it. You still feel the hurt, but you don't let it define your self-worth. You still feel angry, sad, frustrated, but you don't react immediately. You choose to observe before you act. The big question is, how to get to that state? Start by realizing you always have a choice. No one out there can trigger your emotions if you don't give them control. You can't control what other people say, but you can control the thoughts you put into those words. You can't control who ignores you or who doesn't like you, but you can control whether you let them decide how your day will be. That is initiative, that is inner strength, and that is what makes a person free from the inside. You will not become emotionless. You will not become a robot. You are simply learning to respond according to your values, not being swept away by momentary emotions. Have you ever seen someone who, despite adversity, remains calm and clear-headed? You wonder, how can they stay so steady? The answer is, because they have trained themselves to no longer live by reaction, but by intention. No reaction, right pointing arrow, observe, right pointing arrow, act. 3 simple steps, but each time you do it, you're one step closer to true freedom, something no one can take away. And if there's one thing you take with you from this whole journey, let it be this: freedom does not come from being unaffected, but from not letting anything control you inside you.